everyone else ahead of myself. I was a huge people pleaser. I looked through everybody else's eyes as a way to judge myself. And unfortunately, I didn't like what I saw through other people's eyes. And then to make it even worse, I kind of blamed them for the way I saw me, that they didn't think I was thin enough, wealthy enough, whatever it happened to be. So what I also did was, because we are so obsessed with weight and body image, I jumped on that bandwagon as well. And even though I was never really overweight, I was obsessed with weight and body image. And when one of these major events occurred in my life, I had a phone call with a beloved friend who was constantly dumping her stress about her marriage and her life on me. I went for a run on the treadmill, and as I was running on the treadmill full of anger about this conversation I'd had with my friend and what was going on in her life, I heard this wise, loving inner voice say to me, "Sue, whose life are you living anyway?" And I realized that I, at that point, was living my life for everybody else, for their approval, for their acceptance, for their love, and I would withhold my own self back so as to not stir the pot, so as to not make other people angry, to not upset them, to not disappoint them. Bottom line, I was living my life for everybody else. And where the diet aspect came in, I also recognized that because I was not happy in my life because I was living it for everybody else, I distracted myself with diets. So if I could focus my time and attention on dieting and my body and so forth, I didn't have to pay attention to the other side of my life. And so this whole notion of forget the diet about carbs and the diet on sugar and the diet on this, that, and another thing. I needed to go on a diet of self-love.
Mm. So how this notion of living life for everybody else, which a lot of us do, we want approval of other people, and we look, our parents obviously are our first ones. We try and please our parents, our siblings, maybe our boss, our coworkers, our significant others. To me, it sounds like you were being a good little girl doing what you were told, and then
Perfect.
you had a moment, you had an epiphany that said, you know what, this isn't getting me anywhere. What
Correct.
what was starting to show up in your life where this notion of being a good little girl trying to please everybody and not rock the boat? We don't want to rock, and plus we're Canadian. We for sure don't want to rock the boat. We want to be polite. What was this behavior? Um, what grief or aggravation or challenges started to show up in your life by being like this?
I was miserable. I was unhappy. I use the word I was suffering all the time because it's very difficult and it takes a lot of energy to try to be all things to all people in order to gain their love and acceptance and approval and inclusion and so forth. So it was exhausting, and yeah, I recognized that I was miserable. And in that recognition, uh, what also came to me was that I was not the person I wanted to be for the people that I loved. I wasn't the happy wife that I wanted to be to my husband. I wasn't the happy mom that I wanted to be for my daughter. I wasn't the happy friend that I wanted to be, the happy employee. And, it showed up as me criticizing not just myself, but everybody else because I blamed them for my misery.
Wow. How did you, where did the breakthrough come? And when did you
Well,
stop doing that? Like you almost have to just, I don't know if you needed like years of therapy or on a therapist, or was it just a simple matter of stop doing that.
Yeah. Well, as I say, it was two significant events that happened kind of the first one I alluded to where a friend of mine was calling me on a daily basis, dumping her woes on my ear about her failing marriage and so forth. And I was angry that she was allowing this to happen to herself. I was angry at her husband for making her so upset and so on and so forth. And what I recognized that I needed to do is I needed to set a boundary with this friend and say, look, I can't hear these stories any longer because it hurts my heart too much. At that time, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to set those boundaries because I didn't want her to be upset with me. I wanted to be what I thought was a loving friend, but it was costing me a lot to be that so-called loving friend. And so you're right. The next event was where I assumed a lot of responsibility for an event that I was invited to be a speaker at. I ended up actually doing the entire event, again, to be pleasing, to not rock the boat, and so forth. And as these things turn out, at the time I would have said to you that the person who was running this event used me, took advantage of me, walked on me, and so forth. But the truth is that I allowed all of that to happen because I was people pleasing. And at the time I blamed her, but the truth is it was all in my hands and I allowed it to all happen. And basically I came to my knees at that point, and because I realized that, wait a second, Sue, these types of situations where you are feeling used, taken advantage of, walked on, etc., who's the common denominator here? And that was me. And I realized that I needed to learn how to speak up for myself. I needed to learn how to set boundaries. Bottom line, I needed to learn how to love me and stop looking for it in all the wrong places and all the wrong faces, meaning looking outside of myself for that love and acceptance.
You got to look.
I had had a couple of experiences where I actually felt fully in love with myself, where I fully accepted myself, and I thought, the world of me. They were fleeting, but nonetheless I felt them and I wanted more. And what I recognized when I was in that state of pure self-love, nothing could hurt me, even if I were to bring up a thought that would have typically upset or brought me to my knees. In that state of self-love, even that couldn't touch me. It didn't hurt me at all because I was fully accepting of myself.
All right.
And
I want to hold you there. I want to ask a
please,
couple of questions. Okay. So as you're going through
please.
this sort of change and realization, you're realizing that other people were controlling you. You were more sort of like a puppet on a string kind of thing. As in a business context, I call it, that's when the animals run the asylum. That's when our clients dictate to us, what we're to do. And we go, oh yeah, okay, well, how much higher do you want me to jump? What started to manifest like physically in your body at that time? Like, did you notice anything? Did you notice like upset stomach or, a broken heart? Like what manifested in your body, when you were feeling less than?
Right. Um, Not too much, thankfully, but certainly grinding my teeth at night. That was a big thing. So my husband would tell me that, I would wake him up because the grinding of my teeth was so loud and that sort of thing. I certainly struggled with what I thought like was weight issues. It wasn't a huge amount of weight. It was about 20 pounds. And when I started the self-love diet, within a matter of uh, 3 months, I lost 25 pounds and have maintained a 20-pound weight loss with great ease.
So
So,
who did you
yeah,
have
the
to
weight
cut?
was
Who
the
did you
thing.
have to cut back on first? Because
I'm sorry?
with the diet, you had to cut back on things. So what did you cut back on first?
Do you know what it was? I
Was it a
didn't
person
make
or your thoughts?
so it was very much my thoughts and mostly, and just to go back to the food thing, there are no foods off limits with the self-love diet, because again, anytime we're making something wrong or bad, we're pushing against that, and so we set ourselves up to set up that resistance, whether it be a person, whether it be food or whatever. And whenever we're pushing against, there's resistance there, and that is that resistance does show up in health issues. It shows up in negative thinking and so forth. So we want to kind of let go of the resistance as much as we can.
Right. So, if you analyze your thoughts, like our thought, we have like apparently 60,000 thoughts a day or 50,000 thoughts a day. Where do these thoughts of, self-criticism, doubt, shame, you're not good enough, all that garbage, I call it, your thinking stinking.
Right.
Where do those come from, Sue? And how do we transform those thoughts? Because they're just thoughts. And as what's his name? Michael, the guy from Tut. He says, thoughts become things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and they do. They manifest into things. So, where do those thoughts come from? Where did they come from for you? And who were those voices inside you?
Right. Well, I think they come from society. They come from our upbringing, and one thing I'm really clear about is that we can't control the thoughts that enter our head, but we can control the thoughts that we allow to hook our attention. I like the way Michael Neal puts it: you can entertain your thoughts or let your thoughts entertain you. And I think the hardest part about, I like the stinking thinking. The hardest part about our stinking thinking is being aware of them, because we're so accustomed to them in our mind, and they run in the background. And so just starting to become aware is a really big step for us to start hearing what we're actually telling ourselves, or what we're just kind of listening to and accepting.
All right. So I want to go back to what you needed to cut out first. So you had to cut out some thinking. Did you
Hmm.
have to cut out people?
Yes, and that came with some boundary setting. And what was really interesting about this, David, is these people, I didn't have to have a conversation with them. They just naturally fell away. So it was when I started to change my own thinking, and when I started to change the conversations that I would participate in. Perhaps it was that I wouldn't maybe participate in some gossip or whatever, that people then just started taking those conversations to other people. But it was really kind of neat. They just kind of naturally fell away. I didn't should on myself, if you will, that I should call them. And so when I stopped calling them, they didn't call me either, and I saw that as a real plus.
All right. So who inspired you to develop this practice of self-love? Did it just come from within? Were you reading books? Did you go to a workshop? Did you do a retreat? Did you go to
Right.
a convent? I don't know. Like, what did you do? Oh, no,
Yeah,
did you do
no convent.
a
No, you
retreat?
know who initially planted the seed? I've been on this journey for ever since I was in my early 20s, and the first person who introduced me to this whole notion of self-love was Louise Hay. And I bought her book when she originally published it, called You Can Heal Your Life. And she explains in the beginning of the book how she would coach people about this problem and that problem, and that they were having. And over time, she realized that really the only thing she ever really needed to coach people in was to love themselves. And when you love yourselves, all other problems, whether it be financial, whether it be a relationship problem, they all kind of come to their own lovely balance. And really, the only problem that we need to work on is self-love, and come from a place of love rather than being guided by fear.
All right. So fear drives us entrepreneurs. Um,
Yes.
the fear of my bank account.
Yes.
Oh, I better get moving. But as entrepreneurs, and a lot of us are on the call, we're self-employed, we're sometimes hardest on ourselves. How can we begin to shift any negative thoughts and notions we have about ourselves, especially when the going gets tough? You know, the little inner demon voices come barking out. How do we
Right.
how do we shift that?
Sure. So first recognize that that little voice inside your head is you too. So you have a choice to, as Michael Neal says, to let that thought entertain you, or you can say, okay, thanks for sharing, because you don't want to again push against that voice, because then you have that inner battle. Instead, the way I handle it is I say, thanks for sharing. Fear, thanks for sharing. And I like to see fear as being there to try and protect us. But what it's doing is it's causing anxiety and causing us to not be our best selves. And when we're coming from a place of not being our best selves, we emit an energy that other people pick up on, whether they are conscious about it or not. We've all had that experience where we've met somebody and we think, ooh, yeesh. We don't know why. We can't necessarily put our finger on it, but we kind of repel them, if you will.
Hmm.
When we're coming from a place of fear, that's very repelling. But when we're coming from a place of confidence and love and acceptance, people then gravitate to us. So we want to get to that state as much and as often and as long as we can. So as entrepreneurs, when we recognize that fearful voice popping up and saying, oh, when's your next contract coming from? And oh, you'll never get people in the seats. And, those inner demons, as you call them, we can say, thank you for sharing, and then turn it around. And what would we say to a beloved friend? Do you know what? The way I see things, when one door shuts, another door opens. And I'd like to believe that. And so we soothe ourselves with that talk, that self-talk that we would say to a beloved friend, and we start being our beloved friend.
Okay. So, but we get triggered all the time as, entrepreneurs or even just individuals, where our triggers of, not being enough, not successful enough, look at that person, they've got more than I do, or not rich enough, or not lovable enough. How do we deal with these triggers when they come up? Or was that just it? Do you sort of bless the thoughts that come up and just choose a different, more empowering, more life affirming belief?
Sure, definitely, but more specific to this whole notion of being enough, recognize that we're the ones that decide what is enough and what is success to us. And we may not have as much money as we'd like now, but just recognizing, okay, where I am is where I am, and where I want to go is a you know is a good thing, and I'm wanting to go there. Absolutely, we want to recognize all of that. So to be able to, first of all, identify what is enough for ourselves, put the blinders on as far as other people are concerned. Comparison is to me a real it so derails us when we start looking at everybody else's game. Keep our eyes focused on our game. So when we don't feel enough, to question ourselves, what would be enough for me? And then say, all right, what can I do? What are the steps I can do to become enough for me? And be gentle with it all. Uh, I think what we do is we browbeat ourselves into it, and it's not working. And that's where you talk about being hard on ourselves. We think if we can beat ourselves into success, uh, it's never worked for me. And I think a loving, kind, gentle approach will get us there, first of all, and more happily and more joyfully. But I think it'll get us there more quickly as well.
Okay. I'm going to take a break here and open the lines for questions. So for those on the call, most of you are unmuted. You might want to unmute yourself. If you have a question, now's a great time, or a comment, or a case study, or you need coaching, chime on in. Don't be shy. And welcome Dr. Michael and Kathleen and Larissa and Loren and Jamie's back again. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Any questions? All right. So we'll go back to our conversation then. In terms of, I want to go back to this inner critic thing and not being enough. You know, when we're, responsible for our own living, we're not working with an employer, and a lot of us, I think, on the call are self-employed. One of the challenges, I think one of the biggest challenges, it's funny, you know, like we want to be loving to ourselves, but boy, we choose careers that are sometimes really tough on our psyche, especially when it comes to selling ourselves or our ideas or our products or our services. The thing we hold so dear, you know, Sue, like,
Yeah.
boy, it's personal, you know, it's our baby in some cases, right?
Yes.
It's our whole entire identity. It's who we are. So, how can we reframe rejection? You know, and that mental chatter when we're pitching to a client or we're out networking at an event, and people just aren't sort of gravitating towards us. They're not really wanting what we have right then and there. How do we handle rejection? That because that can be a real kick.
Yes. So in your setup of this question, David, you hit the nail on the head. We see our products and our services as our identity, as who we are. So the first step, I think, when dealing with rejection is to separate ourselves, who we are, from our products and our services. So that if a person, a potential client, rejects our products and services, that we don't see it as them rejecting us, but rather that we see them as rejecting our products and services. Next, I think we should just drop the word rejection because it is loaded, and automatically, just even hearing the word for many of us triggers feelings of not enoughness, feelings of not being good enough or whatever. So maybe what we need to do is just stop using that word and start telling ourselves the truth, absolutely, but in a different way. So for example, when somebody doesn't want our products and services, and the way that you've written the question here on the PowerPoint slide is a great way to look at it, that the person just may not need the products or services right then and there. They may come along later on, and I'm happy to have had the opportunity to let them know that my products and services exist. Lastly, I think that we have to recognize we ourselves don't buy every product and service that's been offered to us. So we can't expect all other people, to want or need our products and services. So to go in thinking everybody should buy them is setting us up for a real fall. And again, I think to help us in those situations is really come in alignment with our products and services. When we love our products and services and believe in them, again, we emit that kind of energy to other people that we're kind of throwing out the red carpet for them to love it as well when we love and believe in our products and services. So that's going to attract them more than if we go in a state of fear. Will everybody like it? Who's going to like it? And so forth. I have a wonderful mantra that I live by, and it's mind your own business. My business is not what other people think of my products and services because I have no control over what they think. But my business is to love and value and appreciate my own products and services. And when I do that, chances are other people will also adopt my love of the products and services. They'll buy into them in a better way than if I come at them fearful, will they, won't they buy my products and services.
Okay. So I'm hearing that there's a real big tendency for all this negative thinking, all this beating up on ourselves, all that, we're not good enough, or why didn't they buy from me? They must hate me, whatever. What is it about the human condition, Sue, that, that we tend to be so hard on ourselves, when things do go awry, or when we're anticipating we want an outcome, a positive outcome in the future. And we can, on one side, we're really positive and excited, but on the other side, the shadow side, I guess, is the shadow side is that we're, the thoughts of fear come up, the thoughts of we're not good enough come up, the thoughts of what if it doesn't work come up. What is it about the human condition that we tend to beat up on ourselves like that? Because this is nasty,
Yes, you're right. It is nasty and it's violent.
Yeah,
And
it is
yeah,
violent, isn't it?
yeah, it's a violence toward ourselves. And I think, it comes from our upbringing and socialization where we were punished into submission, into doing things better. If we made a mistake, we would get punished for the mistake. If we didn't do as well, we would maybe be told by an authority figure, whether it was a teacher or a parent or something like someone like that, that if I beat on them, whether it be mentally, emotionally, physically, it will beat them into a better way of being. They will perform better, they'll do better. And we've just taken over from that socialization and continued it with ourselves. And I think, we can certainly turn that around.
So what's the gain? What do we benefit? How do we benefit from being our own worst critic by being judgmental on ourselves and not loving? What's the gain in that? Like we do it for a reason. We're not just doing this for the good of our health, for sure, by
Hmm.
beating up and being critical of ourselves. What do we gain from that?
Well, I like the way that you've posed that question in kind of a positive. And so what we gain from it is we do get to see what we don't like or what we don't want by being critical. And that's the first step of knowing then what we do want. So the gain is um, seeing what it is that we'd like to change or that we don't like this. So now we want to turn it around and say, okay, I don't like this, but I do want this. And when we turn it around, our work, our joyful work, is to then keep our focus on what it is we want rather than on what we don't want. And we've just trained ourselves to look at what we don't want as a way to justify why we are unhappy and see why I'm unhappy, this didn't work. But again, that's not helpful. That's not moving us forward. It's keeping us stuck where we are.
And and
So
and in
yeah,
victim mode too.
yes, very much so. And we are the ones and the only ones who can victimize ourselves,
Mm.
meaning other people can criticize us, but we have the power to accept their criticism or to reject it or to reframe their criticism. They may have said it in a nasty way or an unkind way or an unhelpful way, but we can take that criticism and put it through a loving filter and use it to further ourselves and um, to do it in a more loving way.
Did this sort of your journey of self-love and for people on the call here today on our webinar, do you think it takes like again years on the psychiatrist couch? Or do you think we can do it pretty easily? Like author speaker Byron Katie, in her books and teachings called The Work, and has these 4 questions she asks, right? The turnaround,
Yes.
and she asks like one of the questions is, who would you be without that thought? So,
Yes,
who would you be without that inner critic chiming off in our minds constantly? Is it that
right.
simple? Can we transform our thoughts and our actions and our behaviors that quickly, Sue? And then what do you think of that? Like who would we be without that thought? Or the victim triangle where there's, we live in a victim triangle where usually we're the victim, and then there's a perpetrator and then there's a rescuer, right? And those are the three people on the triangle. And we're either one of those three at any given moment. We could be a rescuer helping somebody else, like you were there for your friend that was venting all the time, or we could be the victim, or we could be the perpetrator, right?
Right.
Causing grief for somebody else.
Hmm.
So, what do you think of so there's a couple questions there. First of all, can we transform quickly, or do we need years on the couch? And what do you think of this notion of who would you be without that thought? Who would we be without that inner critic chiming off in our minds constantly?
Right. So you know what? It is a very simple thing. It's thought by thought and moment, moment by moment, if you will. And it's really kind of tough, though, to monitor our thoughts because you mentioned before and I don't know the number, but it's say 60,000 thoughts a day. For us to monitor our thoughts like that would drive anyone literally insane. So what I suggest is that we just be aware of how we're feeling because our thoughts create a feeling. And when you realize that you're not feeling good, and we're all meant to feel good, that's your emotions trying to get your attention to, hey, something needs some attention here. And usually it is a change in thought, change of perspective, and so forth, because we can't change a lot of things outside of ourselves, but we can always change our perspective. So it really is a practice of how am I feeling, and when I'm not feeling well, feeling good, and that can be, a whole range of feelings. But when you're not feeling good, to stop and take a look at why am I not feeling good? Can I change the circumstances? If not, then I need to change my perspective.
So
We
choose
can
choose choose joy. In other words,
choose joy if you can, yes. But I want to be really clear so that I'm not setting people up for a fall. If you're feeling despair, you can't go from despair to joy. I like the notion of monkey bars, that you can't get from one end of the monkey bars to the other without falling flat on your face. So what we want to do is reach for a better feeling thought, to another feeling thought. So you're inching your way up, if you will, to joy. And it doesn't take a long time. It takes, maybe a minute or 2 minutes to turn things around in a really dramatic way. But don't try to go from discouragement to joy or whatever. You want to go up the emotional scale with better feeling thoughts, and we can do that by loving self-talk and encouraging ourselves and so forth. I
okay.
love Byron Katie's work, and I use that, who would I be without that thought? And I think it would do people a great deal of good to actually answer those questions. We usually sit with the questions without really answering them. So for me, who would I be? I'd be confident. I'd be sure-footed. I'd be strong. I'd be powerful. I'd be relaxed. I'd be accepting of myself and therefore more accepting of others. I'd be free.
But that
So
scares
we're
us too, because that's something we're not, our negative voice is so strong sometimes that it's got a real hold on us, and that scares us. Being our total like selves,
right.
it's scary for some people. Do you find that in those that you work with and teach?
Yes, and I think though if we get down to what is it that you like about yourself, because we give so much of our attention to what we don't like about ourselves. So David, if I think about you, you're kind, you're thoughtful, you're generous, you've got a generous spirit.
Oh, have I got you?
Um, Sorry?
I said, have I got you fooled?
No, you don't. Um, But if we started to look at these characteristics about ourselves that we like and start valuing them. So in my workshop on loving our bodies, I have the participants do this exercise where I ask them to think about somebody in their life who they love and adore and who has made a huge difference in their life. And this person may not even be anybody that they actually know. It could be like Oprah as an example, or somebody that they've read about, but they've had a huge impact. It might be an author. And I ask them to write down what is it about that person that you know has caused you to have these loving feelings toward them. And so I give them a minute or two, and then I ask them, okay, I just want a show of hands. So who here have on their list that they love this person because they've got a flat tummy? Who here has on their list that you love this person because they don't have cellulite? Who here on their list, has put that they love this person because their thighs don't jiggle, right? So the whole point of this is because most of the people in their list have written down that the person is kind. They were there when I needed them. They supported me. They inspired me. They lifted me up. They are a good example. These are all the things that the people would list in their characteristics. But yet when it comes to ourselves, we find fault with ourselves for all these crazy things. But when you look at it, we often have those very characteristics that we like from others. We ourselves possess them. And we need to start valuing ourselves for those things that we value in others.
It's a great point. And especially as a lot of us are getting older, our bodies are changing. You know,
Mm.
we're not that, 21-year-old guy or gal anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's really important to just love our bodies as they change, and to really embrace
Exactly.
our bodies, because they're really beautiful, amazing things if you think about it,
Absolutely.
It
And one of the major, I learned so much volunteering at hospice, and when you work with people who are in their last days, they would give anything to switch places with your body. And it really gave me a sense of love for my body when being with people whose bodies were shutting down, preparing for death. And when you see that and are working with that on a regular basis, it really makes you appreciate the body that you've been given, no matter how much it weighs and no matter how much cellulite or wrinkles it has. You start to love it in a very different way.
Yeah. Okay. And now, little bit of time now for questions from anybody. Anybody have a question? You can write it down, or send me a note, or you want to chime in. Going once, going. Okay, I'm gonna finish off because we're almost actually near our time. I want to talk about the 4 steps. What are the 4 steps to ultimate freedom and living happily ever after?
Well, the first step
It can
is
include scotch.
look at if that does it for you, I'm all for it. The first step is to commit to loving yourself. Make it a priority in your life. And one of the things we learn in the Self-Love 101 workshop is the scientific facts behind self-love and how it is good, not just for you, but your body, that self-love can actually heal your body. There are scientific studies and records of this, and it's quite exciting. But loving yourself for those that you love as well, for your employers, for the people that you encounter in the world at large. And the second step is be on the lookout for ways in which you are not loving toward yourself, because we cannot change what we're not aware of. And if I were uh, coaching you, I would say, let's sit down and take a moment to identify some of the ways that you are not loving towards yourself. I've got 2 full pages because it is insidious. Things like where we pinch the fat on our side, like little insidious things like that, looking in the mirror and with disdain, saying yes when we want to say no, things like that. So in any case, start being aware of the ways in which you're not loving yourself. And I caution you on this step, which will lead us to step 3. At first, when we start doing this, we have a tendency when we catch ourselves doing something that's unloving that we then use that as an excuse, if you will, to punish ourselves. I certainly did, where, I'd say things like, oh, Sue, for heaven's sakes, there you go again, and you teach this stuff. Can't you get your act together? You should be better, right? And I use this second step as just another way to flog myself, if you will. So when I recognized that, then I had added step 3 to interrupt that pattern, to celebrate ourselves with a big, huge, happy dance. Now look, if you're sitting on the subway, you want to maybe do this in your head. But when you are in the freedom of your own home or your office or whatever, and you catch yourself getting down on yourself as an example, and that nasty inner critic is having its way with you, literally get up and do a big happy jig, celebrating the fact that you just caught yourself being unkind, and that you're now going to move into step 4 and you're going to practice some self-love. And that is step 4, and there's all kinds of ways to practice self-love.
Okay. Not the last thing, because I'm going to ask you another question after. What
Okay.
And Kathleen actually wants to know this. What
Perfect.
are 8 practices we can put into play? You've developed 8 practices that we can put into play to
Yeah.
really begin to calm down that, the inner critic, the inner negative voice, that voice that keeps you stuck or small.
Right.
What are those 8 practices?
Yeah, so there are more than 8, but I'm happy to share 8 with you. So the first one is to come into the present moment, where everything is well in this present moment, recognizing.
That's hard to do.
Well,
We're either
you know
living in
what?
the past or we're living in the future.
Right, exactly. And you know what? I love that you said that, because a lot of people say that sort of thing. Sue, it's hard. And how I answer that, David, is always the same. First of all, we can do hard. We're doing it already. It's hard to be in the place of suffering, and we are suffering, as you said, whenever we are regretting the past or worrying about the future. That's hard. So practice just coming into the moment and recognize in this moment, even if you're in pain, in this moment, in this very present moment, everything is well. And I'm coping. I'm here.
Yep.
Number 2 is make peace with you, your body, and what is in this present moment, because it is what it is. And that's another favorite mantra of mine. When I catch myself, ruminating about something I don't like, I remind myself, Sue, sweetheart, it is what it is, and all is well. And what is merely the jumping off point to where I'm wanting to go. I may not like having a body that's 10 pounds overweight. It's okay though, because I'm on my way to something else. And so that's the kind of loving self-talk that I would say to myself.
All right. Number 3.
Number 3 is give myself an ever-loving break, recognizing, not just for me, but everybody, I did the best I could in that moment. And now I'm in a different moment. I'm in a different space and state. I can do better, so I'm going to do better. And I'm going to give myself a break for whatever it is I'm putting myself down for. And what I recognized, David, is when I was able to do that, when I started giving myself an ever-loving break, I gave it to everybody else as well. When I was expecting unattainable perfection in my own life, I was putting those same unattainable expectations on others, and it wasn't fair to them. So when I started lowering my expectations to something attainable and realistic for myself, I did that for others as well.
Cool.
Number 4 is soothe your inner mean critic with loving self-talk. We've talked a lot about that, so I won't belabor that, but just override the thoughts that are popping into your head with loving self-talk. I can do this. I can be a different person. I can move toward what I want, and just encourage yourself.
I went
Number
through a
5,
moment where
yeah.
recently where um, some anxiety around a treatment program was going on, right, for an infection. And I had to remind myself, because I really wasn't looking forward to these treatments, I had to remind myself of all the reasons I deserve it and all the
Ah,
positive things that I've done so far this year. And that
nice,
this is just part of the journey to get me to be even better. So
nice,
so sometimes that's good to sort of step back and do that. And that's what I
nice.
heard in step 4. Is that kind of,
Beautiful. Yes.
yeah,
A wonderful example.
all right.
Wonderful.
Step
Yeah.
step 5?
Stop shooting on yourself. We do that a lot. I should do this. I should do that. And to instead of just blindly following the shoulds that are all, by the way, self-imposed, others may impose them on us, but we're the ones ultimately that accept or reject the shoulds. But what I teach is to just get still and quiet and just listen to your heart's desire and ask, what would I want to do? What do I want to do? What would make my heart sing? What
Right.
would love do?
Yeah, and
Okay?
be okay with whatever you decide. If you don't want to do, I don't know, like on the weekend,
Yes.
I took a real day off on Saturday. And
Nice.
in my head I'm going, yeah, but I should clean, I should. And I
Yes.
went, you know what? No, you shouldn't. You've been working
Hmm.
your little butt off, and just have a good day and relax.
Exactly.
So like
Exactly.
just do it and be happy.
Exactly. And the dust will be there for you to do it another time,
Well, I
so
did
not
it
to
on Sunday
worry.
morning. What? And magically the dust was still there. I wish it would gone away.
There you go.
Step 6, 7, and 8. Just for this.
Right. So 6 is say a loving no when you don't want to do something, even though it may hurt the recipient of the no. If it's done in a loving, kind way, recognize that their feelings are theirs to soothe, not yours to fix by going against yourself. I
Okay.
have a whole workshop on that because it's a huge topic.
How to say no powerfully.
Pardon me?
How to say no powerfully.
Yeah, and as I say, with a great deal of love and compassion, knowing that, yeah, I may be disappointing this person, and that's okay too, because I get disappointed as well, and that's up to me to soothe myself when I'm disappointed. Number 7 is setting loving boundaries for you and for the other person's benefit. If we don't let people know when they're overstepping things that make us comfortable, we're doing them a disservice because we're then harboring resentments against them and we just haven't let them know. So again, just like with no, a loving no, we can set loving boundaries in a very kind and loving way.
Okay. And number 8.
It's a biggie. It's forgiveness, forgiving ourselves and forgiving others, and knowing that it's a true gift to people when we extend forgiveness toward ourselves and let go of our, grudges and resentments and hurts. Because again, I think the greatest gift that we can give to not only ourselves, but the people we love, the world at large, is a happy us. And when we are full of grudges and resentments and hurts, we're not happy. And so, yeah, that's something that we give to the people that we love and the world around us is a happy us.
What about the real quick? The notion of gratitude and
Mm,
and
yes,
affirmations. Affirming
yes,
who we are. Even though we might not believe it right away, affirming. Like positive
yes.
affirmations to remind us of who we are.
So I'd just like to make a quick mention about that, and that is sometimes. when we affirm, you want to feel, how does this feel to me? Is it uplifting me, or is it actually making me dig my heels in further to say, no, I'm not beautiful? Like, let's say I'm affirming I am beautiful, but I don't honestly believe it, right? Sometimes that can backfire on us by saying I am beautiful when we don't believe it. So what we want to do is we want to look at something that we can buy into and that we do honestly believe. So for example, using the I am beautiful affirmation, what I do with clients is, can you agree that you have beautiful eyes? I have beautiful eyes. And when we start affirming what we truly believe, what tends to happen is it grows. And it grows to the point where we start accepting bits and pieces of ourselves till we get to the full point of feeling really good about ourselves, where we can honestly say, I am beautiful, and mean it. But sometimes we have to break it down, baby steps, to move us in that direction, rather than to have us to actually resist the affirmation that we don't buy into.
Okay. Good point. Thank you. Last questions from anybody. Any questions, comments? Oh, we got a quiet group here today. So, I'm going to post this on YouTube probably over the weekend, because today is a little bit jammed, and tomorrow I'm teaching all day in Hamilton. But I want to thank you so much for being here, Sue. This is great. There's your website, right?
Yes, indeed.
Selflovediet.ca.
Yes, and David, I just want to thank you for allowing me to be your guest and to talk about this subject that I am extremely passionate about.
Yeah, I am too, Sue, and you and I talked about it, and I think a big dose of self-love can get you through any challenge you're going through, and you'll not just walk through it, you'll skate through that challenge if you're
Right.
really decent and gentle and loving to yourself. I think it can help you overcome anything you're facing, any challenge or obstacle that you're facing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Our next session will be the 23rd at noon. A guest to be determined. Thank you, Dr. Michael Irving says thank you, Sue and David. So we're going to have a good guest. I already booked the August guest today, and that's Tina Dietz, and we're going to look at the power of making change, the power of change. And in the meantime, though, I just want to wish everybody on the call a beautiful, happy Canada Day next week and a great summer. It's summer officially. Yay! And if you want more information, log on to Sue's site, selflovediet.ca. And if anybody needs business coaching, of course, the Boomer Business Coach. And for Dr. Michael Irving, I'll see you on Monday. You just have to email me your address. And hang on, I got a couple of questions here. And Lorraine says thank you. Thank you to Lorraine again from coffeenewstoronto.com and for being our partner. And Dr. Michael Irving, Kathleen, Larissa, and Sue, thank you, everybody. So this wraps up today's call. Thank you so much. Have a really beautiful day.
You too, David, and you too,